Girl, how can we give a God of Death character story motivations that drive him? Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. That's the question for today. And it's a good question. Okay, but before we get to that, all right, you know the deal. What we do here, all right, is we put in these reps. We're building this storytelling muscle, okay? Practicing on other people's stories, okay? Answering questions to get the brain juices going. Okay, I'm giving you like 8 different metaphors here so that when we sit down to write our own stories or develop our own stories, we're ready. Okay, we've got fuel in the tank. Okay, our brain is already warmed up, primed, ready to go so that the process is fun and satisfying and not scary, not stressful. Okay, we just want to love it because storytelling is fun. It's like the most fun thing you can do. One of the most fun things. Excuse me words. One of the most fun things you can do, in my opinion. But anyway, welcome. Listen, I'm so glad you're here to join me. My name is Ashley. I be forgetting to tell you who I am. Okay. My name is Ashley. All right. Your resident creative BFF. If you need a creative BFF, if you have a question for your story, please feel free. Listen, I want to be a resource. Feel free to hit me up at ash@creativebff.com, or you can go to my website, creativebff.com. You can shoot a little message in the contact, and you can also hang around, look around, check out the things that I offer, the services that I offer as a story coach. And until then, girl, just answer a question from Reddit, which you already kind of know what it's going to be. But listen, let's do it. And before I answer, pause the video. After I read the question, pause the video and let me know how you would approach this character or any sort of like godlike character, right? So to the question from the r/writing questions subreddit by Anime Butt the Third, I'm going to say, not Butt LLLLL, LL Butt J. I'm a problem. Death as a character. For a story I am writing, I have a character that represents death, and I'm stumped for what drives him. This character is a god, and he's pretty reserved. It's like he's just there to do his job. He has a dog named Shadow. I don't know why I laughed there. It just kind of seems like he's just there to do his job. He's got a dog, whatever. To be honest, if you combine the stereotypical Grim Reaper and Hades from Hercules, you'd get this guy. All right, so first and foremost, the first question, which was not clarified in the original question, is this a main character or a side character? If it's a side character, girl, listen, he can be one-dimensional, okay? Or two-dimensional. It doesn't have to be three-dimensional. It doesn't have to be 4D, all right? He can just be that guy that is a god of death and is just there to do his job and is kind of dry, or, you know, kind of like Eeyore, kind of, okay, you know, whatever. He loves his dog, and that's about it. But if he is a main character, which, you know, I'm going to approach this question from the perspective of this is a main character because you asked the question. And if it was just a side character, probably wouldn't need to ask this question because you could just let him be what he already is and use him to inform the main character's journey. But let's approach it like this is a main character. And when you have a main character, you definitely want the main character to have some get up and go, some verb, some zhuzh, okay? Because this is the person that we're following, and their goals are kind of driving and pushing the plot forward. So we need to give him something. So with that being said, what can we do for a god character? So when I read this question, I had a couple of things that started percolating, and I didn't let them fully develop until I pressed record, girl, because we do this fresh, we do this fly. That's the part of the exercise. We do this not do this fly, we do this on the fly. Part of the exercise of stretching our brains and trying to get quick, like doing gesture drawing, trying to get quick with it. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm thinking is, okay, we start the guy off with that sort of base personality that you would expect of Death, the god of death. And I'm thinking, though, of course, you do want to give him personality things. You want to give him weaknesses and strengths. And because this is not God in the Judeo-Christian sense, who is perfect, but it is a God, number one, in the Judeo-Christian sense, there is no god of death. But since we are having a god of death, and since we are probably looking to some cultures, personifications, characterizations of what a god of death might be. So like a Hades, I don't know if other cultures in the world have particular gods of death. It might be interesting to explore. When you look at these ancient religions, right, these pantheons of gods, oftentimes they have very human personality traits and quirks and failings and weaknesses. So it's not unheard of to give this character, even though he is a god character, give him issues. Okay. Where is he living? He's got a dog. Okay. He's got a dog. Is he living on Earth or on whatever the planet of humans that he is servicing, that his job involves, right? Or the planet of beings that his job involves? We'll assume that it's humans on Earth, and this is the god of death, and his job is to take them to the other side, or whatever, the underworld, whatever your, cosmos looks like in your story. I don't know if he's also the judge and jury of where they're going, or if it's kind of like he pulls a ticket, it tells him where to send them, whatever, right? So this type of character who, although he has godlike powers or specific defined powers that put him in a pantheon of gods, he will still have faults, he'll still have weaknesses, he will still have morals, whether good or bad, and he will still have strengths. It also could depend on, or most likely will depend on, what is your story background, what is your world building, what is the structure of the afterlife, the structure of the underworld, of heaven or hell or whatever, wherever dead souls go, people go, wherever he's taking them. What is the structure of that? That could inform what drives and motivates him, because, there's any number of things. So let's get into some options, right? There could be something that threatens his job. Again, that's going to be depending on the structure and the logic of your world. Is he the only god of death? Is there only one for each, I don't know what archetypical ideal, whatever. I don't know what the term would be. So he's the only one, or are there other little gods? Does he have minions under him that help him? That could be a thing where it's like, okay, he's gotten so efficient that he doesn't even have to go out on jobs unless it's like a big job. It's going to also really depend on the goal of the story. What is the plot? Where are you trying to take the story if this is your main character? Is there like a world-shaking thing where now, he can no longer just live the status quo? So maybe he is the god of death, but he does have minions under him who do his bidding, who go and collect, because it's kind of like when the world was new, like, for example, like, okay, when the world was new and there was like 300 people on Earth, it was easy for him to do it personally, right? But now that there's 7 or 8 billion people, or depending on the time that this takes place, 10 billion people, 12 billion people on Earth, it's like, okay, it's no longer feasible for him to, be able to do his duties on his own. So perhaps he does have an office, he does have a hiring thing. So maybe that's part of, and that could be fun. That sounds like a webtoon, right? He's hiring in, people under him, bestowing enough power for them to go and collect, but he's kind of like the CEO of this system, and he has enough time to have a dog and whatever. And perhaps it's gotten so efficient that it's kind of like he doesn't really have to work, and is that good? Does he like that? Or is that kind of stifling for him? And then now, is there some kind of threat to humanity that now he has to step in and assist with? What is his relationship with the other gods in your pantheon, in your universe or world? Is he an outcast? Is he, just number 2 in charge? Is he like, I don't know, like the main guy, Does he have issues with whoever created humans, and maybe that one is kind of like janky, you know what I'm saying, and going a little crazy? So now he has to save the humans that he ushers into the underworld. Is there no more room in the underworld? Is it getting full to critical mass? And so now that's a problem that he has to solve, because the underworld was never created to house 7 or 8 billion people, or however many. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you can look up the statistics of how many people have died, over the course of however long humanity has been on Earth. If there's math that tells you that. But perhaps, there's a backlog in his workload. Another one that may or may not be cliche. We have kind of seen it, maybe there's a romance aspect, a romance component to it. What is his backstory? Like, has he been a god since before humanity was created? Or is there some system in the logic of your world that allows mortals to become gods if they take on a certain job? Did he become death so that he could find his lost love in the underworld, and he never did? And then, so now he is death, but maybe, the love comes back somehow. I don't know how that would tie into a story. We could make it work. Listen, I would have to know what this person wants to write. But finding motivation and drive for a god character that represents death is pretty much the same, I think, as finding motivation and drive for any character, because you haven't determined that this character is a perfect, faultless, sinless, holy God. How do you write for that character? I don't know that could be a main character. I don't know how to write that main character, okay? If they're perfect. And make them interesting for a story. But since you have not determined that that's what they need to be, just because they have godlike powers doesn't mean that they don't have human personality traits and issues, things that they've experienced, things that they've seen. I mean, you can always go maybe you don't want to do this, but there is a route that makes sense that maybe we have seen before, where it's like, okay, death is kind of tired of it, bro, but he can't die, deathless death. Maybe his motivation, this might be kind of dark, or it could be, doesn't have to be dark, but maybe his motivation is to find a way to die because he's just tired of it, so he's it could be like a mixture of death and Groundhog Day, where it just kind of feels like that movie Groundhog Day. He just keeps living, he's trying to find a way out of this loop. Maybe it's an isekai type of story, one where somebody is thrown into another world, somebody from our world is thrown into another world, and they have to live throughout this story. And so he's trying to find a way out. So he's thrown into a story. This is not anything that this writer said that they wanted to do, but it could be interesting. Listen, go with me on this flight of fancy. Somebody from our world is thrown into a story world where they now have to embody this character of death. And so there's this combined thing of them wanting to escape the story, maybe trying to figure out how to do this role. Maybe they've been designated by the previous death to be death or whatever, and maybe they never wanted to. So it's going to have to be a thing of you think about their backstory. Okay, how did they become this person that they are at the beginning of the story? And you will probably be able to find seeds and nuggets that you can use to inform their motivation and their drive. Then you would put circumstances in the story that would draw that out. That takes them out of their status quo, out of his status quo. I mean, it could even be a John Wick thing. Then his dog gets lost, and that's like the small little thing that takes him on this quest and this journey. You know, the fact that you have a god of death that has a dog suggests that he has the ability or a kind of a humanish type of trait of loving something lesser than him. And so, you know, you can play on that. Dog gets lost, dog dies, or maybe he made the dog deathless or whatever, to just be around forever. I don't know. So, but you know, like a John Wick thing where the whole series, right, wasn't it? I haven't seen the whole series, but wasn't it sparked by the fact that this dog that his dearly departed wife gave him was killed, and so he went on this whole quest, and it spawned the whole series. I think that's how that story went, right? So I think that's going to be my answer. Let me see if I can TLDR the answer for what would drive death. Number one, what is the logic of the world? Your world building is probably going to tell you or give you some hints and some clues. What is going on with the pantheon of gods? What is Death's backstory? Okay. What is the structure of Death's world, the status quo as it is? How does he do his job? Does he have others that help? Is it a big enterprise? What sort of story are you telling? Is it sci-fi, romance? I mean, it's probably like in the fantasy, since you have God of Death type of thing. What is the goal of your story? What is the plot points that you want the story to follow? Because that's going to help to determine his drive and his motivation. So we're looking to the circumstances of the world. We're looking to the relationships or lack thereof that he has. You want to do some character building. Think about his personality traits, because he is a god that is not perfect, holy, sinless, whatever. He's kind of more in the Greek, Roman, old school mythology, pantheon of gods type of vibe, right? So they have more human traits. So what sort of traits are you giving him? How does he feel about where he is now in his life? Is he happy, at peace? Does he hate it? Is he bored? You know, and then once you kind of determine what is this character, who is this character, what does his world look like, who is he in contact with, what is the status quo of his life, then we can think about, are there some circumstances that can happen that will shake up that status quo? Whether it be something on a micro scale, like something relational, or is it something on a macro scale, like something threatens the world that he operates in? And so now he has to step up to protect humanity, protect humanity, protect his job. And it could bring out some feelings, emotions in him that he didn't realize that he had. Maybe he cares for humans in a way that he hasn't in millennia, that he didn't know that he did, because when something comes to threaten the whole lot of the humans, he's like, no, you're not going to kill my babies, or whatever the case may be. So that is where I would go to start trying to start excavating for what drives death. And so I can't give this is exactly what it's going to be, because it's going to depend on your story and the story you want to tell and the world building. But that is where you can go. Backstory, world building, world logic, relationships, the status quo of his life as it is. and then what kind of circumstances come to threaten or shake up that status quo. That could be kind of where you could start to try to find, the driving, motivating factor for your God of death. But listen, I feel like I said a lot. I feel like I was talking a mile a minute. All right. What is your answer? How would you go about trying to give a God character motivations and something to drive them, especially if they're the main character? Or do you have any specifics for this particular rendition of the God of Death? What would you do for this particular character? How would you advise? What was this? What was the person's name? I lost it. It's gone. Whatever the person's name is, how would you advise the poster to approach finding their driving motivations if you were coaching them? Okay. But in the meantime, listen, in between time, it is always a pleasure to spend some time with you. Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time today. I hope that even if this didn't specifically help you with your story, because it was a specific question, as these usually are, hopefully it will give you some tools that you can use when you have questions about your own character's driving motivations and how you can try to identify some for your story. But anyway, listen, love you. Does that sound crazy and fake when I say love you? Listen, it's just how I sign off. Okay, listen, love you. Have a great day. Get some sleep tonight. Do not let that blue light be in your eyes until you start going to sleep. Okay, it's going to mess your whole sleep schedule up. Get some good sleep. Drink some water. Okay. Take a walk and breathe some fresh air. Bye.